not let us imagine
Because it's so much fun, Jan. Get it?
So, The Movie Critic, a movie that was all set to go into production, has been canned. Quentin Tarantino's take on Taxi Driver was potentially going to boast the talents of Tom Cruise, and Paul Walter Hauser.
I know a guy, shouldn't even be saying his name. Derek.
It was potentially going to be set in the same world as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and see the return of Brad Pitt's Cliff Booth.
We love pussy.
Yes, we do.
I was very excited for this, and I am deeply saddened that QT has scrapped it at seemingly the last hurdle. Reportedly, he simply did not want to do it anymore, and it feels like this has little to do with the potential quality of the movie, and more to do with Tarantino's long documented, infamous obsession with his film legacy.
You're only going to make 10 movies in your career. Are you really only going to make 2 more movies after this one?
That's the idea. That's the idea.
He's long said he wants to make 10 films and stop, before he gets too old, before his films start to suffer. And this is even something I covered on the channel all the way back in 2018. I do see the merits in wanting to quit whilst you're ahead, but now that we're at that mythical 10th and maybe final instalment, it seems that it is hampering the creativity.
So I'm not going to think that I have 4 movies or 6 movies that I will eventually get around to doing them all. If I only think that I only have 2 movies, well, that means that those ones better be good and I better mean everything about them, and I actually like that kind of focus.
It's clear that Tarantino hasn't run out of steam, and it's a damn shame we may never get to see what the Movie Critic had to offer. Tarantino, give up on giving up.
What are you doing?
Hey, don't do that.
Don't do that again.
What do you think? Should Tarantino stop at 10 movies? Would you have liked to have seen The Movie Critic? And what's your top 5 Tarantino movies? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like full fat videos, please consider subscribing with notifications on, because that would really help with the views at the moment. Seriously, I don't know what's going on.
Say the goddamn words, you're gonna be okay! Oh, God.
Tarantino originally said he was going to retire at 60, all the way back in 2009, partly because of the push towards digital projection in theatres. He's now 61, so if his final film were to start soon, he'd have only been a few years off from his prediction 15 years ago. In 2014, Tarantino said, "If I get to the 10th, do a good job and don't screw it up, well, that sounds like a good way to end the old career." I think that's interesting because it implies that he wouldn't be satisfied at 10 if he felt he screwed that final picture up. It's no secret Tarantino is very deliberate with his filmography and wants each individual film to stand up to the rest. He's spoken many times regarding directors getting worse towards the end of their careers, and he believes that one bad movie could spoil the entire crop. A director's filmography, in Quentin's eyes, is only as strong as its weakest link.
I'm gonna tell you why I'm so sure. Do not ask me a question like that. I'm not biting.
First off, I just want to scrutinise the idea of him having only an up to 10 films, including whatever he will make next. I know Tarantino wanted Kill Bill to be one film, and it was Harvey Weinstein who pushed it into a 2-parter, but the fact remains, no matter what the intention was, it was 2 concrete releases. I'm sorry, Quentin, numbering all your subsequent films as if that one was one release is just a bit of a cheat. Hateful Eight is really his 9th, Hollywood is really his 10th, 10 is really the 11th, 11 is really the 12th, and so on and so on. Wait a minute, I think I'm confusing it with something else here. I also want to shout out 3 movies, From Dusk Till Dawn, Natural Born Killers, and True Romance. Whilst I don't want to do the directors of those movies dirty anyway, Robert Rodriguez, Oliver Stone, and the late great Tony Scott, I do see them as part of the honorary Tarantino film canon. They have his mark all over them because of those scripts, their in-universe connections, or the fact one of them has QT slurping booze off of Selma Hayek's foot. Ugh. I could listen to an argument for the idea there's already basically 13 quintessentially Quentin movies. And where do you place 4 Rooms? I haven't seen it, but he directed a portion of it, so where does that go, you know? When God sings with his creations, will a turtle not be part of his choir? When Tarantino sings with his creations, will 4 Rooms not be a part of that choir? Hell, he even guest directed a bit of Sin City, Does that count? What do we give those movies? Some sort of fraction towards the 10?
I'm as real as a donut, motherfucker.
I think another huge problem is that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood could have already served as his swan song.
The weight was really on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Really?
That's kind of like my big epic. That's like my big wrap up the career kind of epic. And
It was full of all the guts and glory of Tarantino's earlier works, and was a love letter to Hollywood. If that had been his 10th film, he would have gone out on a high that would have felt appropriate given the rest of his work.
I don't know what the next story is going to be. I'm imagining it'll be more epilogue-y.
So now, his final film feels like it has to clear an impossible hurdle. He's already done the swan song in many ways. Even if this last film is really good, will it feel like a tacked on epilogue more than a grand finale? Maybe that's why the Movie Critic seemingly evolved from something standalone to something potentially involving the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood world. Also, just purely as a fan, it will forever be a shame to me that we never got to see so many of his unrealised projects. He originally wanted to do Kill Bill 3 10 years later, but 2014 came and went. He toured with a Django Zorro team-up movie, which just sounds so insane and awesome, and I would have loved to have seen more from Django, to be honest. Tarantino was going to get Antonio Banderas back alongside Jamie Foxx, and this one came so close to happening that I'm still sore over it. I also have to pour one out for the Star Trek movie he didn't end up making. Tarantino is a fan of the series and also the rebooted Trek with Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto. That series has languished in development hell since 2016, when all these other spacefaring IPs have seen directors worn away to nubs and tossed aside repeatedly. I think it would have been such a slam dunk if this movie had gotten made at Tarantino's hands.
Like, I guess I do have a loophole if the idea was to throw a loophole into it, all right, which would be, I guess Star Trek doesn't count.
Much to Simon Pegg's chagrin, Tarantino said it would have been Pulp Fiction in space, basing it loosely on the original series story, A Piece of the Action, featuring the crew time travelling back to the 1920s. This would have been so much fun, and it would have taken a steaming pile over all the exhaustive IP star drivel we've had in recent years. And hey, if it's a franchise picture, something Tarantino has been tempted by in the past, with stuff like Luke Cage, then he could have made it and just deducted it from the total. That would have made as much sense as discounting 4 Rooms or Kill Bill as 2 movies. We'd have all let you have it, QT. Man, R-rated period gangster QT Trek with Pine and Quinto. As a fan of both Tarantino and Trek, this would have been a sight to behold. Screenwriter Mark L. Smith told Collider that QT basically didn't make it, all because of that 10 movie limit. He said, Quentin and I went back and forth, he was going to do some stuff on it, and then he started worrying about the number, his kind of unofficial number of films. I remember we were talking, and he goes, if I can just wrap my head around the idea that Star Trek could be my last movie, the last thing I ever do, is this how I want to end it? Came out more like Mike Tyson than Tarantino, I don't know what I'm doing there. And I think that was the bump he could never get across, so the script is still sitting there on his desk. Doesn't that just seem kind of silly? I don't know. Even if he didn't make Trek, I would of course been happy with more original scripts. 10 is an arbitrary number. When you really stop to think about it, what's the reasoning for this? Why stop at 10? It's not very Spinal Tap of you now, is it?
Cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly.
If we say, oh, I don't know, 12 movies, where would that take Quentin? Probably through to one more decade's worth of movies. And we'd have gotten the Movie Critic, or Django and Zorro, or Kill Bill 3, or Star Trek, or a whole bunch of original feature films. The timing of Tarantino's potential retirement comes at a time where I feel the industry needs powerful voices who can create original movies with their name alone. Christopher Nolan recently said that he's going to keep making films with huge budgets because he's one of the few directors that have the power and the sway to do so. And he sees that as a responsibility to take. I kind of see that for Tarantino as well. He has a lot of creative sway in his own way, and he's one of the arbiters of modern cinema. You've got Scorsese saying this art form needs to be fought for, and you have a director who satiates mainstream audiences and hardcore cinephiles. It feels like he's stopping at a time when cinema needs people like him to keep going. He's previously flirted with writing for TV after he's done with filmmaking, and I just can't help but feel like that would be a huge shame. Streaming is taking away from theatrical exponentially already. To lose Tarantino to it would feel like a huge blow, even if we got some really great shows. His work, quite frankly, belongs on the silver screen. Of course, there is the fact that if he doesn't want to make movies anymore, then he is well within his rights to stop. He wants to spend more time with his kids and be a present father, and who can complain about that? That is awesome. My dad didn't do that for me, and he wasn't even responsible for Pulp Fiction. There's really nothing wrong with QT stopping for good if that's what he wants. However, this whole final 10th film thing seems to be choking him. Why does it need to be made now? He could take a break for as long as he wants, do that final film whenever. It really does seem like the umming and ahhing on what to do, the cancelling of the Movie Critic, is all about cementing that film legacy rather than just doing the movie because he wants to do it. This obsession with legacy is futile. There is really no way to control how you'll be remembered in any way. It will be decided for you long after you're gone. I also just fundamentally disagree with the idea that a bad movie or two, or even 3 or 4, spoils someone's filmography. Depending on how many good movies they've made, of course. Let's say Tarantino does make a 10th film that ends up sucking, or he goes past the rule, he keeps making movies well into his twilight years, and they don't quite hold up like his earlier work. Who fucking cares? Who will even remember? Either way, his legacy will be predicated on his good movies, not his bad ones. Sure, lots of directors produce more stinkers as they get older. I do think that is a notion that has credence, but will I remember David Cronenberg for Cosmopolis or The Fly? John Carpenter for Ghosts of Mars or Big Trouble in Little China? Spike Lee for the atrocious Oldboy remake or his masterpiece Do the Right Thing? Even Martin Brest for Geely or Midnight Run?
One place he knew he could hide something, his ass.
Interested? Yeah.
Even a more middle-of-the-road director like James Mangold, no disrespect to him, am I going to remember him for Dial of Destiny? Or am I going to be like, yeah, Logan, Walk the Line, that thing he did with Tom Cruise, what's it called? They were bloody good, weren't they? Night and Day, that's the one. There's some directors like Elaine May, never made a bad movie, but that also wasn't by design, she got stuck in director jail. You can't do anything but play the hand you were dealt. Look at Scorsese, the dude is 81 and he's still killing it. Every single release in the last 10 years has been a banger, and if anything, he wants to cram as many in as he can. But don't just judge me by my winners, judge me by my losers because I have so few of them. I think perhaps the best example of this not mattering at all is Ridley Scott. Sure, his later work has been divisive, but you cannot have anything but respect for the fact that he just keeps on directing. And he's still capable of shooting out a movie like The Last Duel or Alien Covenant, which I will defend with my life. Hell, Gladiator 2 could have the sauce. We don't know yet. When Ridley's reign ends, will he be remembered for the accents in House of Gucci or the influential science fiction masterpieces that are Blade Runner or Alien? Is there still hope for the Movie Critic? Well, maybe. Tarantino did cancel plans to make The Hateful Eight into a movie and instead did a read-through of the script as a special one-off, but he eventually changed his mind and of course made that movie. That could happen with this, but the situation is a lot different this time. No matter what happens, I will respect Tarantino's decision to walk away, more so because of his personal life than his filmography. I just think that ultimately, if he wants to focus on his family, then I'm happy for him to pull a Dom Toretto and drive off into the sunset, but if he still gets the itch to make another movie in the future, a movie that breaks that one rule, then why not just go for it? We all want to see film number 11, and it won't even matter if it ends up not being as good as Inglourious Bastards or Pulp Fiction. I mean, there's not much that is. The risk taken to make it would be what matters. This video was released early on my Patreon, so if you want to get access to earlier releases, or hear me break down the new Deadpool & Wolverine trailer on the Full Fat Podcast, then please consider joining the Patreon from as little as $3 a month. The link is in the pinned comment below. Patreon.com/fullfatvideos. Thank you very much. As always, a big thank you to TDW Fan and Dr. Chike for keeping the lights on, for being my Full Fat tier patrons. Thank you very much.